a few things that have been on my mind lately. I was struck by a message you sent me last week about the White Rose, the resistance to the Nazis within Germany through the 30s and 40s, and how rare it was, how rare resistance was, and how quickly things get normalised. You know that I often think of that article in Harper's Magazine from the early 40s by a writer who went on to become a great historian of Nazism, and she was contemplating a social situation and wondering, in the events of Nazis rising in the United States, who in her company would become part of the process, part of the project, who would resist it and who would keep their head down. I think one of the things that history doesn't teach us, or one of the things that history necessarily overlooks, is the people who do nothing. History is generally the story of people who do things, right? People who do stuff. And if they're doing bad stuff, the people who resist them. It's not often about the people who do nothing, the people who are not that invested in who is in charge. Even if they're undertaking atrocities, the atrocities don't reach them. They've got bills to pay. You know, they've got jobs to do. And then there are the people who are quietly complicit in the really bad stuff. I looked at the front page of the Daily Telegraph today, and I'm afraid I heard echoes of the 1930s. There's a massive picture of Melania Trump and no story at all, just a massive picture of her saying Melania's salute to women of courage. Put me in mind of Leni Riefenstahl. I mean, it looks like propaganda. Here's a massive picture of a woman and she is saluting women of courage, even as her husband embarks upon a project so loaded with misogyny that you wonder whether you've taken leave of your own senses. Story yesterday, I told you I've already lost. I've already failed to keep up with everything, so I forgot to mention to you yesterday the story of the man who had been deported by accident and is now in a horrible prison, and the courts can't bring him back. The American administration has admitted that he is there by accident. It's a clerical error. Imagine if that was you, or that was your dad, but it's not a white man. It's, I think, a Hispanic man, so it won't register in the way that it may otherwise have done. And that question there of what do you do? I mean, how bad is it? You're getting the articles. Daily Mail, for some reason, has started paying Daniel Hannan to write articles again. The world's wrongest man. Inevitably slotted into the House of Lords by Boris Johnson. But, writing articles about, Trump's absolutely awful, but perhaps he's right about this. Or Trump's absolutely awful. They're not even pretending he's not absolutely awful anymore. They're just giving you the Mussolini made the trains run on time line. Mussolini say what you like about Mussolini, but at least the trains ran on time. That's where we are now already. He's only been president for 2 months. And then, of course, you've got the domestic situation. If you don't know, that's a bit of a miracle, because I cannot be accused of being quiet about it or not mentioning it very often. So I wrote a book a couple of years ago called How They Broke Britain. And today's news contains, as you will have heard, probably, the news that the NHS satisfaction has hit a historic low. I'd remind you, it hit a historic high in 2010, shortly before Gordon Brown ceased to be Prime Minister. It's now hit a historic low. I've got another story for you about police services in England, Wales and Northern Ireland being too overworked to investigate crimes properly. So demoralising for police officers. And that came before the news this morning about potential cuts to the Metropolitan Police. So what are the two biggest institutions that ordinary citizens rely on? What is the biggest bang you get for your tax buck? Probably the NHS and the police, right? If you leave pensions and things out of it, in terms of what you get. The bin's emptied, unless you're in Birmingham. You get the NHS and you get the police, and they're both at historic lows. And that's the country Keir Starmer is governing. That's the country Keir Starmer is governing. And what do you do? What do you do when you are reliant upon somebody who wishes you harm? I don't know what the answer is to the question of how do you deal with a bully who has great power over you. First thing to acknowledge, of course, is the fact that if we were part of the European Union, he would have less power over us. Second thing to acknowledge is we don't currently know for sure what's going to be contained within the tariffs that are announced in the White House later today, but they cannot be good news for the UK. By under any reading, there cannot really be any good news for the United Kingdom. We are upon the precipice of what almost all experts describe as a global trade war. President Trump is expected to hit Britain with tariffs today, reports Rupert Murdoch's Times newspaper, that will take immediate effect, forcing ministers to tell businesses to brace themselves for a turbulent economic time. The tiny bit of wriggle room that Rachel Reeves identified, or rather that the OBR gave to Rachel Reeves before her autumn statement, will be wiped out in a flash, in a nanosecond, if and when these tariffs land. Crippling is the word used on the front page of the Daily Mail, a newspaper which, of course, still employs several columnists who were cheering Donald Trump's re-election to the rafters not long ago. Now the same newspaper is reporting upon his plans to, quotes, cripple, end quotes, this country for no apparent reason, or at least for no reason that we managed to identify yesterday. A string of downgrades to the British economy as a consequence of this so-called Liberation Day. We import, the US imports 2.3 trillion, not from here, but 20% tariffs on all of that. And then a story on the front of The Guardian, which caught my eye and which should probably have caught yours, about the US tech firms being offered preferential tax terms by Keir Starmer in return for lower tariffs. And this, again, to quote the front page, as the UK government braces itself for a global trade war. Headline rate of digital services tax reduced in an effort to placate the US president, except it doesn't placate the US president. It placates those men who were sitting behind him at the inauguration. It placates the barons, the 21st century barons who have such sway over the Mango Mussolini that their interests are often conflated with his. I'm not sure that that's the right way to play it. I'm not sure of anything at the moment when it comes to the traditional tools that we use to analyse politics being largely useless when you're dealing with something so untraditional, so abnormal. And that's Starmer's problem, isn't it? And so that's what I want you to talk to me about today. I want you to talk to me about what Starmer should do. How should he be bending to Trump? I think we missed quite a big point yesterday when we were talking about tariffs, partly because I was in an oddly contrary mood and partly because I think sometimes I haven't got the question quite right if I'm unsatisfied with the calls. Some of the calls were brilliant yesterday, but some were not. And that's always my fault, not yours. And one of the things we missed, one of the things I got wrong yesterday was the sense of leverage. It's not just about getting British firms, getting non-US firms to move manufacturing into America. It's not just about the plan or the hope of raising lots of cash from tariffs, which will enable him to give tax cuts to lots of people, most obviously the richest people in the United States. It occurred to me that sometimes the abasement is the point. Sometimes with Trump, like with all hideous bullies, it's the abasement that is the point. It's the means and the end to his self-aggrandizement. It doesn't matter whether or not there is a subtext or a plan behind the actual humiliation. He loves to see people prostrating themselves before him. If you look at the people who have been critical of him in the past but have somehow been welcomed back into the fold, they are always welcomed back broken. Marco Rubio, broken. The people that Lindsey Graham, broken. The people that have even said that the barest boo to the Trump goose are never excluded from his court permanently. They're always allowed back in, as long as they come in on their knees, as long as they come in covered in metaphorical sackcloth and ashes, as long as they come in humiliated and debased. And that is part of what these tariffs are designed to do. It is an exercise of strength. It is an exercise of power and might that has nothing to do with him. It's power and might accrued by all of the things that Trump hates about the United States of America, accrued by globalism, accrued by a leadership role on the world stage, accrued by Pax Americana, accrued by massive international spending, accrued by all of the things he despises most for reasons that I don't think anybody has properly worked out, have created a country that enjoys enormous power, economic, military, political power. All of that comes with the job. It's not anything that Trump has created or even in any large part contributed to. And it is that power created by all of the things he hates, liberal democracy, free trade, global leadership, all of the things he hates the most have created the power that he is now going to wield. And he's going to wield it by putting Europe and, putting every other country on the planet in a except Russia, in a thumbscrew. He is going to try to hurt us. And it is going to succeed. He is going to hurt us. And we could sit here for weeks wondering why. I think it was the thing I missed yesterday. The thing we all missed yesterday is that perhaps the answer to the question of why Donald Trump is doing this is the simplest answer of all. The 3-word answer. Because he can. Why are you doing this? Because I can. What's the point? Doesn't matter. I'm going to hurt everybody. Everyone will see my power. Everyone will feel my wrath. Everyone will want to please me. Everyone will bend. Some will break, but all will crawl in order to avoid the pain of my power. Of course, it's not his power. It's America's power. But you tell me what the difference is. You tell me where one stops and the other ends. And, of course, he's trying to break down all of the safeguards and institutions that protect the American Constitution or the American country from dictatorship, already making noises about a possible third term. So, I mean, I think that's it, don't you, now? And by the way, you think my monologues are long, you should check out that congressman in the United States of America who spoke for 25 hours straight yesterday. We'll be paying tribute to him shortly. I believe a lot of it was reading, though, so I don't consider him to be competition. I think that's it. Why is Trump doing it? Because he can. He doesn't know what happens next, but he knows that once you have humiliated, we're not even opponents. We're supposed to be allies. But he still wants to humiliate us. He is still going to hurt us. Saying it's about £1 billion in Scotch whisky exports to the United States of America alone. That's $6 billion in cars, all the high-end car. But it's going to hurt you all. Why is he doing it? Because he can. Because he wants to. I almost feel I could go home now. I came off air yesterday quite frustrated. I always am frustrated when I feel we haven't made proper progress. I don't come off. I hate more than anything coming off air, finishing our time together, not feeling that I understand the stuff we talked about a little bit more than I did before we talked about it. And I feel I let you down when that happens as well. It doesn't happen very often, touch wood. But when it does, it means I've not done my job very well. And I came off air yesterday and I didn't understand this more than I did before I started talking. And I already do now. Why is he doing it? Because he can. What's the point? To hurt us. He doesn't know what happens next. He just knows that if the people he is dealing with, and if you see everybody as an enemy, if everybody is an opponent, then the phrase the people you are dealing with becomes quite loaded, right? But when the people who you are dealing with are broken or are humbled is a good word. They're humbled. They're on their knees. Then you are much more likely to get your own way. Whatever your own way is. You say to him, what is your right? He doesn't even know. And that's why the front page of The Guardian struck me as quite sinister this morning. The two front pages. The front page of the Daily Telegraph, which might as well be a Hitler-supporting Daily Mail in the 1930s. Just a big picture of Melania Trump saluting women of courage. No context, no story, not even a link to a page within that tells you what was actually going on. It's just an excuse to print a massive picture of her appearing to be noble and good and generous. And then the front page of The Guardian about our Prime Minister already on one knee. Oh, well, in order to avoid the pain that you can bring to bear upon us, Mr. President. Would you like these shiny baubles? Would you like these jewels? Would you like these tax cuts for the most wealthy and powerful companies in the world? They should be paying less tax than I do, than you do, than we do. Yes, we must. We must bend the knee. And here's the question for you. It's all about hurting people, isn't it? It's all about hurting people. A couple of people saying, here's good. Andrew, it's like grooming, isn't it, James? Yes, it is. It's the zero-sum game, says Craig. No matter what it is, he has to feel that he's winning every day, and that means he has to be hurting. It means someone has to lose. It's all about hurting people. And David says, I didn't think you did, actually, for what it's worth, but you are allowed to have a bad day at the office occasionally. You're very kind. I'm my own worst critic. Do you know what the question is yet? It's not a nice one. You may not like it. It brings the Ming vase back into play, you know? Old Keir Starmer carrying that Ming vase across the ice rink to get Labour into power, but what's he going to do with it when he gets there? The pragmatist, the man with no ideology, the man whose role is simply to solve problems. How do you solve a problem like Trump? You roll over. You can't stand up to him. You can't fight back. European Union already announced that it will. Keir Starmer already announced that he won't. Does he have any choice? Does the Prime Minister of Brexit Britain have any choice but to answer an American president screaming jump with the two-word legend, how high? How high, Mr. President? Jump! Starmer, jump! How high, Mr. President? How high? Does he have any choice?